Eira Brewer has been helping people manage the impact of dyslexia through strategy coaching since 2016. Through working with adults who have dyslexia, dyspraxia, ADHD, and other associated neurodiverse conditions, Guy has developed a wealth of knowledge and skills in this area. With 25 years of experience in the UK education sector, learning to listen to people, recognising their concerns and working with them to solve problems, Guy has brought a great deal to his role as an independent strategy coach. But it's not all work. Guy is keen on the outdoors. Having grown up in East Anglia, he enjoys the landscape of the Brecon Beacons and the valleys of South Wales where he lives with his family now, and loves to walk his dog Martha and ride his mountain bike. Believing that well-being is rooted in healthy living, Guy combines his love of exercise with an equal passion for healthy cooking and eating. In addition to coaching, Guy also delivers webinars and presentations, conducts workplace needs assessment for adults with dyslexia in the workplace, and delivers awareness-raising sessions. Guy's most recent public appearance was at the 2022 Dyslexia Show, held at the NEC Birmingham at the end of March. Guy spoke at length about his perspective as a dyslexia coach, how he entered the profession and his current experiences in supporting adults with dyslexia and other related neurodiverse conditions in the workplace. You can find Guy on YouTube, where he has his own channel full of tips, interviews, explanations and information, or on social media under his brands Positive About Neurodiversity and Positive About Dyslexia. Guy is an enthusiastic networker and is always happy to chat. You can book some time to talk with him through all the usual channels: text, phone, email, direct messaging, Calendly, or why not join him for a walk or a bike ride on the mountains?
Hello, this webinar is about revision for dyslexics, how to make information stick. And this is for you if you are a pupil, a student, a parent of someone with dyslexia, or the partner or friend of someone with dyslexia, or maybe even if you're an educator. And it's not just dyslexia. If you have ADHD, dyspraxia, or any of the other associated neurodiverse conditions, then this will almost certainly be of help to you. Now, I am joined by a special guest today, of course, to take us through this valuable information. Welcome to Eira Brewer. As well as being my daughter, Eira is exactly the right person to be here to tell us how to revise and to make stuff stick. Eira studied history at the University of Exeter, and after that she completed a PGCE and became a history teacher in secondary education in the UK. This experience has provided her with inside knowledge about learning, revision, managing exams, and so she has valuable insights into the whole process, from teaching and learning to revision and assessment, which is particularly helpful for today's webinar. Eira made the change from teaching to tutoring when she joined Golexia, the South Wales dyslexia business, as a dyslexia tutor. In that role, Eira has worked one-to-one with pupils of primary and secondary school age, delivering personalised sessions to help them develop their literacy skills and to flourish in school. And this has been done through a range of learning programs, activities and games. So she knows what works for dyslexics. The broad age range that she has worked with means that Eira has covered a vast range of skills, from teaching young children the vowel sounds to helping sixth formers prepare for their A-level exams. Over the last couple of years, Eira has completed the qualification to assess and diagnose dyslexia, so she's moved into a new role with Golexia as a Dyslexia Assessor. Welcome, Eira.
Thank you for that lovely introduction. It's a pleasure to collaborate with you. Now, for today's webinar, I have made a PowerPoint presentation, which I will share with you. And I believe that this will be available to download as well. Brilliant.
Yes.
So we are going to look at these three areas in the presentation. Going to focus on the challenges that people with dyslexia experience when it comes to exams and revision. We're going to look at a revision toolkit, so everything that you need in order to revise effectively. And I'm going to reveal the cute strategy.
Love it.
So if we start off with the challenges. So people with dyslexia experience all kinds of challenges, and everybody's different. So nobody will experience the same thing as somebody else with dyslexia. But generally, there are some areas of difficulty, and those are shown in the blue box. So spelling, reading, writing, comprehension, which is understanding and remembering what you've just read, and then motor skills, particularly to do with handwriting. So people with dyslexia often experience difficulties in holding a pen in a comfortable way, or putting the right amount of pressure when they're writing. So sometimes they might press too hard. And these things can create an achy wrist or pain in the hand or pins and needles. And this is particularly stressful, I suppose, in an exam situation where you only have a certain amount of time to write out everything that you know in order to answer the questions. So that's something that lots of people experience. In the green box are some other factors that people with dyslexia might have difficulty with. So not being able to remember specific words. It might be that they know the word that they want to say to express themselves, but they just can't quite find it, even though they might have used the word yesterday. Or they might use a similar word that sounds similar, but isn't the correct meaning for what they want to say. They might have difficulty knowing how to start a paragraph or how to start a sentence. And in an exam situation, they're not going to have a sheet of sentence starters or some suggestions on the board to help. So that can be difficult. People with dyslexia can also have difficulties with structuring their writing. So writing an essay or an answer in a way that flows nicely. They might have difficulty understanding the exam questions, understanding what it is that they need to do, especially if a question is made up of more than one element, or it involves an example or a case study that they need to dissect in order to then answer the question. Lots of people with dyslexia also have a slower processing speed. Not everybody, but some. So this slows down the rate at which they can read a question, understand the question, think about all of the points that they need to write down. And then it also affects the process of writing, thinking about spelling, thinking about sentence structure and everything else. And finally, in this list, a lot of dyslexic people might experience difficulties with their attention concentration, which is the length of time they can attend to or concentrate on information. And everybody's concentration span is different. I like to think of it as a sponge. So once it has absorbed its capacity of information, once it's saturated, it cannot take in any more information. My concentration span might be half an hour. Your concentration span might be 10 minutes. Everybody's is different. And this can cause stress in an exam situation or in a revision situation. So it's really important to understand how long you really can attend to and concentrate on information for. Next, we look at the revision toolkit. So this is everything you need to revise effectively. So in the box on the left are the pictures. These are the well-being things. It's important to get enough sleep. It's important to eat and drink regularly, a healthy diet, and so on. The timer in the middle represents that you should spend time that works for you. So with the concentration span, for example, if you can only concentrate on a task effectively for 10 minutes, split your revision into 10-minute chunks. The clapping of hands shows that effort should be praised. So people with dyslexia need to put in probably more effort in certain tasks than those without dyslexia. So this effort should be recognised and should be praised. And finally, in the blue box, with the thumbs up and the star, this shows that they should recognise their progress. The revision process is a marathon, not a sprint. So whoever's doing the revision should be able to look at their progress and feel good about what they're doing. In the green box are all of the practical things that you will need to revise effectively. So pens, felt pens, pencils, highlighters, things to make it colourful, colourful paper, colourful card, post-it notes, resources, of course, so school books, revision guides that you can buy, online resources. BBC Bite Size is a brilliant one. YouTube is a brilliant one. If they don't have all of the information that they need in their book, then YouTube videos and YouTube channels are a wonderful way for them to find this information. Of course, teachers can help, friends can help, parents can help, and so on. It is a great idea to have a list of topics so that you can kind of tick them off as you go through them and you know where you're at with your revision. Exam question examples are also necessary for revision, and I'll explain more about that later on in the presentation. And finally, I've included at the bottom files, folders, Polly Pockets, anything that works for you to keep the revision resources together and organised.
I've got to dive in here.
Go for it.
Say that this is a great toolkit, and its revision is a bit of a project, isn't it? And
Certainly.
You have to go into it, especially if you're supporting other people, with organisation in mind and getting prepared to be able to do it, because having dyslexia is tough, especially if you're doing it through the medium of reading and writing. It's going to be hard. All this stuff helps to bring it alive, which is what will help to embed it in your brain. And as a person who does workplace coaching with a lot of adults who've been to university and often done well at university, what I hear a lot of is that they've used things like YouTube as an excellent resource for learning from. So keep an open mind about where you get information from. Sometimes it's great to have it through that medium as a augmentation to what you may have in your books from school.
Definitely. And BBC Bite Size, which I mentioned, has a lovely mix of videos, written information, pictures, and so on. So as you said, it's a bit more multi-sensory. Okay, now we're moving on to the more exciting part, the cute strategy thought up by Positive About Dyslexia. What is the cute strategy, you might ask? Here it is. This is the process of revision. So it involves creating resources. Use the resources that you've created, test your knowledge, and then apply your knowledge to example questions. And this part includes lots of pictures and examples of resources that I've used when I've been helping pupils to revise. So I've looked at 4 key strategies, which I think are really helpful for revision, but there are so many different things that you can do. It's a great opportunity to be inventive and creative. So find whatever works for you. But a great place to start is with keyword cards, as spelling is often a difficulty for those with dyslexia, and different exam subjects have completely different vocabulary that can be quite tricky. So one way of creating a keyword card is to use a mnemonic. And the classic one that lots of people learn at school is for the word because. So a mnemonic works by creating a silly sentence by using the letters of the spelling that you want to learn. So in this example, Big elephants can't always use small exits. And then at the bottom of the card, I've got a picture of a big elephant and a small exit, just to remind me of the sentence. When it comes to trickier words, more complex words, different meanings, for example, this one, rain, which is quite a complicated spelling and a word that you might not come across regularly, it's a good idea to include the word or something to do with the meaning as the first word of the sentence that you create. So rain is to do with ruling, which is why I've picked that as the first word. Ruling everyone in great nation. And the little picture of the crown, just as another visual reminder of what this word is to do with. The next one, biology related, heart. Lots of people can get mixed up with the E and the A. So again, I've used the word in the first sentence of this mnemonic. Hearts everywhere are rapidly thumping. When I was a history teacher, we taught about Queen Elizabeth, and Elizabeth is quite a difficult name to spell. There are lots of vowels in it. People aren't sure where to put what. So it's a really good idea to break these kinds of words into parts. So we've got the big E at the beginning that's bold. Then we've got Liz. Then we've got a big A, which is underlined. Lots of people aren't sure if it's an E or an I. So we've made the A really big and then put Beth on the end. Author, another tricky one. So splitting it into pairs of letters that have different colors. Muscle. So a lot of people miss out the C in muscle. So it's a great idea to make these cards as visual as possible, which is why the C has got a pair of muscles. And then there, and there. Lots of people get these ones mixed up. So again, making it visual. So for there, to do with location, I've put a box around the word here, and I've incorporated the arrow. There, to do with people and their belongings, this little stick person. And there they are. The A replaces the apostrophe.
Can I jump in before you start talking about mind maps? Got to say this, is that you've obviously made those resources yourself. They
Yes.
don't have to be, I'm guessing, they don't have to be amazingly brilliant finished artifacts that look like they've come from a top designer. Is it best, would you say, or what is your thoughts on making them for someone or making them with someone? Is the process of creating them part of the learning? How can you use them?
That's a really good question. Definitely creating them yourself. So the whole process makes it more memorable anyway, because you've gone to the lengths of cutting the paper, thinking about how you're gonna turn this word into something visual. What colors are you going to use to split up the different parts of the word? So definitely I would recommend making them yourself. Some people need a little bit of help, so maybe working out. So if you're a parent helping your child and they're not sure how to split the word into parts, you could work with them to figure out which part of the word they're finding difficult to spell, in little pictures. So things, any associations that you have with certain words, definitely include some pictures on there.
Because I guess we're creating here something that plays to the visual strength of people with dyslexia, so that it creates an image in the mind, as well as understanding the spelling and knowing the sequence of letters too. And I guess, although you've picked examples which may be relevant for younger people studying, you can apply all this to more complicated stuff, words like hemoglobin or musculoskeletal or economics or environment and bigger words like that. The principle, doesn't it, applies to all words.
Yeah, definitely. I'd be impressed if somebody could come up with a mnemonic for hemoglobin. But yeah,
there's a challenge.
Definitely can be done. Another example, like I said, try and make it like pick up on associations, make it relatable to you. Working with a child who found it difficult, or teenager who found it difficult to spell the word took, T-O-O-K. So they created a little picture and came up with the mnemonic took over Oscar's kennel. So they had a picture of the kennel and the dog. Oscar was their dog. So that's another example of how you could do it. But yes, the principle is the same.
And personalizing it, doesn't it, helps a lot as well. If it has some meaning for you, if you've got a dog called Oscar, I can imagine that helps embed it even more effectively.
Yeah, definitely. Any more questions, or can I move on?
No, sorry.
No, don't apologize. The next strategy that I would suggest using for revision is mind maps. Sometimes they're called spider diagrams, sometimes they're called thought showers or brain dumps, but my favorite terminology is a mind map. And the way they work is by putting a subject or a topic in the middle and then separating out the information into subtopics or categories. So here you can see there's a chemistry one on screen. And this one is more of an overview. So there's not too much information on there. There's a lot of keywords, but they can be much more detailed if you want them to be, like in this example. So again, this is to do with science, and they've used different colors so you can see clearly the separate sections, but this is much more detailed. It has a few more sentences or phrases on there, but you can still see like in the orange sections, they've created like they've used arrows instead of words. They've used diagrams at the top and the bottom. They've included a table. So all of these things can be incorporated into a mind map. It doesn't just have to be words. And this is a really effective way of getting information, the really important information, onto a page in order to learn it. So I would recommend going through your school book or revision guide that you've bought or whatever it is that you have, and highlighting just the really key information and then putting that onto a mind map in a more organized way. So a mind map does take a little bit of thought and a little bit of organization, but this is where color comes in really handy. So if you're looking at the green Bohr model, then you could get a green highlighter and highlight everything in your book in green. Then you could put numbers next to the points that you've highlighted so that they go in the correct order, and then you can transfer them onto a mind map. This one you can see has a lot more images and a lot more keywords rather than sentences or phrases. And I think how your mind map comes out kind of depends on the subject that you're looking at. Some subjects lend themselves to summaries and keywords more easily than other subjects. But if you can try and get it visual like this, then that's a really good thing to do. Makes it more interesting to look at and makes it kind of easier to remember for lots of people. Strategy number 3, diagrams. So there are some subjects where diagrams are going to be relevant. You'll need to be able to recognize something that they show you, or to be able to label something as part of a diagram. So the most often that I've seen this is in biology. I'm sure there might be some other subjects as well. So the example here is an animal cell. So we've just recreated an animal cell and the parts in it, but we've labeled them and colored them in particular colors. And on the back, we've written the names of the parts in the same color. So everything kind of matches and coordinates. And this is a really helpful thing to do when you come to learning the information. So color coding is a really, really good idea.
Can I say?
Yeah,
can I
go
say
for it.
here that looking at this, you think, yeah, of course, it makes it such, it's so obvious. You see the B, the nucleus, that color, instantly your eye is drawn to the same color in the diagram. It seems kind of taken for granted. And I think if you were to, the danger is that people do the labels all.
We're already, when you look at the animal cell picture, it's already a little bit of a test. Can you remember what A is? And then you turn the card over to remember it, because they've got a summary of the plot in case it's missing from your book or you haven't understood the work. To make it more interesting, at the Burling house. So the first picture on the top left is a picture of the inspector in his top hat, and he's at the front door. I don't think you can see it, but on the letterbox there's a little B for Burling. And then the next sentence, he tells them how a girl called Eva Smith has killed herself by drinking disinfectant. He wants to ask them some questions. So in the corner of the card, there's a little bottle with a skull and crossbones to show that it was disinfectant. We could have included another symbol, maybe a question mark, as a reminder that the play starts by him asking questions. But different things and different symbols will work for different people. So we've turned the 8 sentences into 8 events, and the numbers are on the back of the card, so that when you come to test yourself later on, you can check whether you've got the events in the right order. These cards can be we tied string between 2 chairs and then strung them up. And you can change the order, take them down, and so on. But timelines can be made however you want to make them. They can be on a single piece of paper. You can buy rolls of paper, so you could have the longest timeline ever. You can stick them on your wall. You can use post-it notes to stick on a desk or on a wall. It can be however you want to do it. But I would recommend pictures for things like stories and plots. Also, because the English keyword cards were orange, we made the timeline cards orange. So using color again to create associations, to keep everything organized, so this person knows that all of this stuff that is on orange card is to do with English. Another good idea. This is a more traditional timeline to do with history, Hitler's consolidation of power. And this was written onto 2 pieces of card and then stuck together and then stuck on a wall with blue tack. So you can see that there's different colors for the different events to really separate them. There's little symbols used for each of them. So we've got the fire for the Reichstag fire, the X for the political parties being banned, and so on. And again, if you can bring in associations with your own life and things that make sense to you, then that's really a very significant event. But the 19th of August is also my cousin's birthday. So that's a personal link that I've got. And to make it even better, my uncle, her father, has always been extremely interested in Nazi history and Hitler. So that just makes it even more memorable for me. So if there are certain dates or things that have significance for you that you can connect to different events, even better. we've looked at creating resources. That is stage one, taking the information from your book, from your revision guide, from BBC Bitesize, wherever, and creating resources with it. The whole experience is really helpful. Next, you need to use the resources. Just because you've created something doesn't mean that you now know that information. You need to use what you've made to learn the information. And then once you've done that step, you can test your knowledge. So make sure that you know the information and work out the bits that you still need to work on. So for the purposes of this presentation, I've included those two steps together. But when you are revising, it's really important to use the resources and learn the information first and test your knowledge afterwards. If you try and test your knowledge before you've learned the stuff, you're not going to know it. It's going to cause a confidence crisis and possibly a panic if exams are looming.
Can I dive in here?
Of course.
Just quickly to say that I'm not dyslexic, but I've used mind maps a lot in the past because they are a great way of managing information. And this is what revision is all about. And it's about managing information and capturing it. And what I found useful with mind maps is that you can create a mind map from the information that you have and you capture it. And this one here is a good example, isn't it? Because you can then recreate it again on a blank piece of paper or whiteboard, whatever is your thing, or computer, in order to test how much you've learnt. And what I've always found useful, which I think is really helpful, is that you can think, oh, what was the green stuff in the top right-hand corner about? And having that color and diagrams and, you know, more than just endless pages of words helps you to kind of see it in your mind's eye and to focus in on it and to think, what was that? And it's a really powerful way, not only of creating memorable information, but for recreating it again and again, and refining it as you go along. So I think it's, you know, you create the resources, isn't it, as one step, and then using them imaginatively, and everyone will be a bit different, as we say, in what works well for them. But the secret is to try out different ways, isn't it, to process this information, to find out what's working, because all the time that you're doing that, it's focused on the subject and reinforcing those neural pathways, which is how memories are made.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, you become, when you start learning from the resources, you become really familiar with them. So you can think about the green bit or the pink bit in the bottom corner. And then even when it comes to exams, you might read a question and think, oh, that's asking me about the blue bit on that mind map. So yes. So using the resources to learn the information, there's lots of different ways you can do it, and you need to work out what is the best way for you. So for example, with the keyword cards, you need to look at them over and over again, turn them over, say the spelling or write the spelling on a whiteboard or a piece of scrap paper. Check, have you spelt it correctly? Were there a couple of letters that you weren't quite sure of? So practice again, read it, look at it, close your eyes, visualize it. If there are certain spellings that you're just not getting, maybe you can identify the letters that you're getting mixed up or whatever you're missing out, and then you can amend the keyword card. That's the beauty of these revision resources that you've created, is you can change things and add to them and amend them at any time because they're yours and they need to make sense to you. So with the keyword cards, you might make a new one or circle particular letters or highlight them or whatever is going to make sense to help you learn the words. So there's a lot of repetition with this stage, with learning the information. Some people like to say it out loud, to talk it through. That's what I always used to like to do, was to pretend that I was explaining it to somebody and just sit in my room and talk it all through. Stick them somewhere where you're going to see them, in your bedroom, on the fridge, on the bathroom door, so that they become familiar and you see them all the time. With resources like mind maps, again, you need to do the initial looking at it, reading it, talking it through, singing it through. Actually, that reminds me, somebody I worked with made a keyword card for the place Caerleon in Wales, which has a tricky spelling. So they made this visual card, but to help them learn it, they turned it into a song or a little rap. So they remembered it as C to the A to the E to the R to the L-E-O-N, Caerleon. And that worked for them. So figure out what works best.
Another thing that someone told me that they found really useful as well, having created a lot of this stuff, loads of mind maps, is that they had them on the walls around their house. So when it came to the food technology exam, for example, he said he was sitting there and he was thinking, oh yeah, I know this stuff. And he could visualize the information because he could see it, because he thought, yes, that is the stuff on the wall in the bathroom. So that kind of environment connection does work. I think it is a scientifically verified thing that if you can place something in a particular location, it helps to add weight to the embedding of it. So, you know, particular place on your bedroom wall or in the kitchen, wherever you can, so that you can see yourself there and see the information there. It's all about bringing it alive, isn't it? And connecting it with your life and having it make sense.
Mm-hmm. I think certain smells work as well. So you could get aromatherapy oils, and whenever you're working on history, get the lavender. Whenever you're working on science, peppermint. All of those things just help to create an experience that you remember and can refer back to, as you say. So a lot of learning the information from the resources is the same. It's looking at it, reading it, speaking it out loud, telling it to a friend or a parent, and so on. To test your knowledge of mind maps is a good idea to cover a certain area of it and then say it out loud, ask somebody to ask you about it so that they can check, are you giving them the right answers, and so on. This is a process. You're not going to remember everything straight away. So you need to have patience, and you might get 3 of the facts right, but there might be that 4th one that just keeps eluding you. So then what can you do to remember that 4th fact? Do you need to highlight it on the mind map? Do you need to create a little card that you can learn from, and then whenever you think about that topic, you remember that there was a mind map and an extra card, for example? I would recommend counting how many pieces of information there are to learn. So, for example, the experiments bit in red has 4 arms coming off it. So there's 4 pieces of information there to learn. So when you use your post-it note to cover it up and you're saying it out loud and talking through it, count off on your fingers, have you covered all 4 pieces of information? With diagrams, the same applies, but you can make other resources to supplement the learning and testing process. So B in the diagram is the cell wall. It's coloured orange. So I've created a question and answer card. So on one side is the question, what is the function of the cell wall, and I've included a little picture of it so that it's always emphasized. I know what part of the plant cell I'm being asked about. It's all in orange, so I've got that association anyway. And then the answer is on the back of the card. It strengthens the cell and supports the plant. So you could use this both ways. You could have a question and an answer, or you could just have a keyword instead of a question, so that if you picked the card up and you read the bullet points first, strengthens the cell, supports the plant, when you turned it over, it would have the answer, just the keyword. And you might want to make those kinds of cards not in orange. So once you've learned it, you're testing yourself without those associations to see, do you truly know it? With a timeline, all the same things to learn it and use it, but then you can test your knowledge in different ways. You can do it in different stages, find what works best for you. So the first event on the 27th of February 1933 is the Reichstag fire. So I've covered over the information to do with this, but I've given myself the date and the event. Next time, like once you've learned all of those pieces of information, you can cover the event and just leave the date. So you can test yourself. What happened on the 23rd of March? Can you remember the event and the consequences of it? You could use symbols. So the X for the banning of the political parties. The Reichstag fire could have a fire. So you could even put a little number on there for how many points there are to remember for each event. But the picture is what triggers the information. And then you can do what I've done for the last 2 points, which is cover them entirely. Once you've learned them, cover them entirely. Can you remember the whole of the timeline? So it's different stages and different things work for different people. And it's kind of up to you to mix and match and figure out what works best for you. So once you have used the resources to learn the information and tested your knowledge, you can use, or you can apply this information to example questions to really prepare you for the exam. And before I explain about that, did you have something to add?
No. I'm
I saw you
absorbed.
move.
Yeah, no, I'm completely absorbed by the example questions. So I'm waiting for the next step. I'm on the edge of my seat.
Okay, so example questions, you need to be able to apply everything that you've learned to the kinds of questions that are going to be asked in an exam. It would be such a shame to know everything there is to know about a topic, but not to be prepared for the kind of question that they might ask you about the topic. So you really need to know what they're looking for. And we're going to go into this a bit more in depth in our next webinar. But for now, I've got some pieces of information here. So example questions are probably going to be provided by your teachers. At some point, they might give you a few different ones to take home. They might have provided them throughout the school year. If you're at university, your tutors might provide them. If you're a parent and teachers haven't provided them, you can get in touch. Maybe they could send some over. So you might have used previous examples, previous exam questions as part of your work. BBC Bite Size, which I love, has example questions and example answers and a few different levels of answers. So they explain why one answer would have got more marks than another one, which is really, really helpful. And anybody can download past exam paper questions. You might not always be able to download the most recent ones, but there's always examples available from the exam board websites. So as long as you know who or which exam board your subject has been taught through, you can go onto the website and download the questions. In the green box are some tips to do with the questions specifically. So I was always taught at school RTQ, which means read the question, but read the question carefully, understand the question. So you need to be able to identify the keyword that has been used. If a question asks you to define a word or a process, it's just asking for what that word means, and is probably not going to be very many marks. If an exam question asks you to summarize something, summarize an event, for example, it just wants an overview, the key things, or the key, I can't think of the word, consequences of an event. If an exam question asks you to explain something, it wants more in-depth information and is likely to be more marks. So you really need to understand what the question is asking. You also need to familiarize yourself with the mark scheme. And I'm talking mostly about GCSE or A-level questions, but this is the same for any kind of exam. There is a mark scheme attached to different styles of question. So if you understand the mark scheme, you understand the hoops that the examiners want you to jump through in order to be awarded with points. So it's really, really important to familiarize yourself with the mark scheme, but also to practice answering questions and then practice marking them so that you can see where you're missing out on points, or why you haven't, you might not have achieved as many marks as you thought you might have because you didn't include this in this way. So you really need to practice, practice, practice.
I've got something to say now.
Of
and
course.
so I'm going to say it, and that is that you know, looking at all this stuff, it's not to be taken lightly, is it? It's not a night before job. You might be able to do some of it the night before, but if you, where there's research to get some exam questions and get yourself organized with understanding what type of question it is and what's being asked, and all the work for the revision that leads up to it. You know, it is a project, it needs support. It's something that comes much more easily to those people who don't have dyslexia and other associated neurodiverse conditions. So it does take time and energy and effort, and it's so preparation and support from those around
Definitely.
you is absolutely important. And it's tough if you've got to do it all on your own. So, you know, seek collaboration from others. And I've met plenty of people in my workplace coaching with dyslexia who have got first-class degrees, but often that's because they have put in the time and the effort and the energy that is required. So it's dyslexia is a blinking nuisance for a lot of people, isn't it? And it's a disability, recognized as disability in adults. And exams and revision are particularly challenging because it works against all the challenges that dyslexia throws up. But with time and energy and organization, you can demonstrate your capabilities. It's hard, but it can be done. So don't give up and get organized and get support, and you will be able to demonstrate your brilliance.
Yeah, really well put. I think, as you said, people really need to have their effort recognized. It does take a lot more effort because all of this deals with language, which is the issue that people with dyslexia have, dealing with language, is difficult. So yeah, this throws up lots of challenges. You said about support. There's absolutely no reason why you can't share resources with friends, have like revision workshops with friends. You make the resources for one topic, they make the resources for another topic. You take pictures of them or you photocopy them and swap. So somebody's made them for you. It might not work in exactly the way that you kind of understand, but that's where I said you can amend things. So if somebody's written a keyword card, but there's a letter that you keep forgetting, amend the card, add the letter, change, you know, all of the, oh, go on.
This stuff works for everybody. You don't have to be dyslexic. This is good revision technique and tips for everybody.
Definitely. Definitely. So, as you said, it's a process, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. Remember the cute strategy thought up by Positive About Dyslexia, and good luck.
Absolutely. So this is, I got to say, the end, because we are going to do a separate webinar about exam technique, and there'll be a third webinar about transition between educational institutions, whether that's primary to secondary, within the secondary sector, from Key Stage 3 to Key Stage 4, and so on, and to university. So I hope that you have all found this webinar useful. I know that I have, and luckily I'm not taking exams for a while, at least I hope. And but it's full of great tips. So thank you to Eira for coming up with all this stuff. We know it works, so try it out.
Yes.
Different things work for different people, so have an open mind about exploring what's going to work. Allow plenty of time, and if you have any questions or queries, get in contact with us through the usual channels. We have Eira's email here, or GoLexia, or me through my YouTube channel. Generally, you know where to find us. So hope you found it useful. Hope you will join us for the next webinars, and this one will be uploaded onto my YouTube channel before too long, with the PowerPoint as a downloadable piece of content. So thank you very much, and goodbye.
Goodbye.